Hey kids, welcome to the Stylus from Harmony Animation Time thing. Today's episode we are going to animate Blue doing the thing that we did in the other video. So if you didn't happen to watch the expression video, some of you out there look, I don't see you draw, just animate things, blah. So we did this guy and just a few changes of expressions here. So I've taken that a little bit farther into like a little faux storyboard. Not a storyboarder, but this is good enough. We'll call them roughs. Dude, so he's looking up, he sees something, he's freaked out a little bit, and he books it off screen. Because animation is a timely process, I've actually already done the keys. And that's what this video is going to be, is just me doing the keyframing, pointing out some of the techniques I use, some of the tips on how you can save yourself a little time by stealing keyframes back and forth, unplugging things and plugging that back in so you can copy and paste things in a sneaky way. I'm not sure how long it's going to be once it's edited, but it's the whole keyframing process. Next episode, I'm going to get into the breakdowns and the actual animation and see how far we can get in there. But hopefully there's a few ideas that you can take away from watching me keyframe out this little session here. So one thing that baby animators do when they do independent animation is when they start the scene, the character's doing nothing. You just cut in, characters just staring at a thing or waiting for the scene to start. And that's kind of acting 101. Watch any sort of show. As soon as the show starts, it's very unusual for somebody to be doing absolutely nothing. It'll be mindless busy work, like looking through some papers or playing on their phone like I have here, but they'll be doing something. It's not very often that people just sit in a room and do absolutely nothing. So your scene started before you got there. Your camera's just coming across the thing that's happening, and talking on your phone, I feel like, is like the #1 thing people do nowadays. So I threw that in there and figured that's a good place to start. And there you have the character looking up. Now, if you're doing independent stuff, I do recommend doing a little rough thumbnail like this, just so you can get an idea of how your animation is going to come across without having to muck around too much with the rig, because it's a lot more time consuming to try and get a rig to do something like this than to just sketch it out. And even if your character is just a really simple little stick man, I mean, that's good enough to tell yourself this is the pose that he has. You don't need to do a crazy amount of detail to be able to just get the rough timing out of it. So, I mean, a little stick man will do. I do recommend putting a little nose on your guy, because it's really easy to show where someone's looking if you have a little nose to point the direction, if he's looking up. I mean, if he had no nose, then that just looks like it doesn't, you know, like this is much easier to read with basically a free add-on, throwing a little Pinocchio nose in there. So get yourself a little bit of rough idea of what you want to do. And of course, if you're working in a studio, they're probably going to supply you with storyboards, you would hope, and you'll be able to work off those. The first thing I like to do is grab the poses I need. So I've got the 3/4 facing this way, and then I've got a 3/4 facing this way, and I'm probably gonna want to throw a center, like a straight in there, but I don't feel like that's a huge issue right now because I'm gonna be saving these over here. So grab my 3/4 front view, put him here. Woo, it's auto tweening. I'm gonna grab my other 3/4 front, and I'm going to put him where he needs to be. Here. Maybe I'll put the font in just for funsies. And what I'm going to try and do, I'm going to make sure that my key poses are going on odd numbers because I want this to be on 2s. So if we start on 1, the next one will be 3, and the next one will be 5. So you know that your frames are always going to be on the odd numbers. Our auto tween doesn't look as hideous, but I'm going to set that, turn off my motion tweens, and make sure that my preferences are set so that I'm getting stop motion keyframes. So your general tab, stop motion keyframes, is right here if you don't want it to auto tween on you. So I've already added a master peg into my scene, and I can all keyframes mode my character into place so that he's about where he would be the board. And then you can move your storyboard. If you're working in a scene, I like to add a little peg to move my board. That way, if I want to check it, the registration, I can deactivate that peg and it'll pop back to where it was before. And I can just have it over here as reference. One thing it's good to remember, if you are setting up your keys, don't use if you're using a 360 rig like this, you don't want to use all keyframes mode. Because if I bend this elbow here, it's going to bend in all the views. And then he's going to have this crazy busted arm as you rotate around. So you have to remember to turn that off when you're using your 360 rig, and just be sure that you're on the keys where you want to, and copy and paste where you need to. So now I've got them set up in the scene about the size I want, and I've got all my rotations in there. I'm going to start on frame 1. Seems like a great place to start. And I need to build this phone into the hand. I have built myself a little cheapy phone. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to connect it to the hand that it's going to be pulled around with, which is that one. So of course you can just hit the hand and press O in your network, and it's going to center on selection, and I can paste my phone, create a new phone, connect him to the hand. Now this hand, if you're using the blue rig, has a fingers overlay built in. So you just want to pop your phone in behind that overlay. So now if I slide this guy in here, then I can adjust the hand by using that overlay layer. So here I'm going to make a duplicate drawing of the hand, because you never want to destroy the hands you have already. And I'm going to copy the pieces that I want to be above the phone onto my overlay layer. So now, as easy as that, we've got our phone sitting in the hand. We just need to get rid of this line, and without too much work, we've got a little hand working. We can go into the details of the fingers a little bit later. It's not crucial at this stage. And we're going to extend the exposure of the phone all the way along, because he's taking it with him. Okay, so now that you've done all the technical stuff, you've got that out of the way. You're sure you have the right character. He's got his prop that we need. The scale is set up. You've got all the different poses that you need, or like the views that you need in the scene. This is when I would start setting up these poses. And I would start at the highest possible frame. So we've already started outside the group on our universal peg and scaled him using that. We could even call this scale and then add a more different one for our translate and stuff later on. I don't need to use my master peg within the character group, but I like that in case I want to do a whole keyframe. So I want 100% of these things keyframed. I can come in here and hit F6. Are there any places where our hands are down by our side? Here's one, F6. So I'm going to put a keyframe here, because back here when I start bringing this arm up and foreshortening it, that's going to cause me distress if I have to unforeshorten it later. So this one I'm going to keep a little bit closer to neutral, and then just copy over any pieces from before that I want to keep. Now on frame 1, the next thing down, we're looking at upper torso. So upper body and lower body. Our lower body's not necessary, so we could actually just like remove that if we wanted to. The upper body, I'm going to use my chest deformer to give myself a little bit of a lean. And again, I'm going to take a little second to see, like here I want less of a lean, but I've already got a keyframe there, so I'm stopping that animation from proceeding past there. So I'm going to have him lean back. Maybe he's leaning against a wall. Now, when I drew this pose, one thing I wanted to make sure of was, instead of my head tilting down this way, because that's a very cutout thing to do. So the character's looking down, so their whole head kind of rotates on that weird 3/4-y, not like, it's the lazy paper doll way to do it. But instead of doing that, I want to have my head actually look down. Okay, so again, as always, I'm going to see, where do I want my head to look up? Here. So at this point, I want my head to be yeah, more up. So I'm going to hit a keyframe here so that I can preserve this perspective at this position. And then I'm going to go back and make a down face. So I am going to bring the chin down a little bit. Let me actually do this on frame 2 and then slide it over. We're going to bring it down a little bit, but we're also going to counter rotate the face and bring it down a little bit. And we want to adjust all the little pieces that are going to give you free perspective. The glasses, the line in the glasses, by looking up, this is going to give you a little bit more of a downy look. And we could even bring the glasses down a little bit, like in our drawing. So the glasses have slid down his face. And I'm going to see if I have a longer arm here, or if I want to redraw it. I think I'm just going to I'm going to do drawing substitution there, because it's getting really skewed, because I need a lot more length than I've been given. So I'm going to draw a new one. And we're going to bring our hair down and make it a little longer. So when you're trying to figure this stuff out, this is the type of thing that knowing how to draw is really going to help you with. Knowing how, when things rotate in perspective. So even just these glasses, you can have glasses straight on, or if you're looking down with glasses, they're going to start to foreshorten. like that. So just knowing those little details, knowing that when the head comes down like this, the hair is going to come down as well. So if this is where the hairline normally is, the hairline is going to be longer, so you can make this bigger, and the shape down here, like the distance between the chin and the mouth, you can bring that down and make it a little bit closer to, layer am I even drawing on here? You can make it a little bit closer, the distance between here and here. And by flipping back and forth here, you can see that it's starting to look a little bit like perspective is happening. Forward. And I want his poof to kind of hang down, give his poof a little bit of a life. So by doing this on frame 2, I've been able to give myself a little bit of a reference here. I can keep an eye on the scale of things and how the actual tilt is happening. Boop, 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 boop. I feel like that's working pretty well. And one thing that's good to pay attention to, eyes are really important for giving your character life. I want you to keep your eyes open as wide as you can and then look down. Like, it's really uncomfortable to do. If you look up, it's not as bad. If you look left and right, it's not as bad. But when you're looking down, your eyelids tend to go down as well. It's pretty hard to have a wide-eyed downward look. So I'm just gonna bring these guys down a little bit, maybe a lot. I'll bring down halfway. Just by bringing those eyelids down, it's starting to feel a little bit more downy looking. And you can also cheat the perspective on these little circle eyes, so you can squash them down so that he's looking super down. If he needs to look like down at his shoes or something, you can cheat that quite a bit. And if you need him looking slightly down, you can just do it a little bit less. So make sure that his eye direction is right at that phone, because that's an important step to getting this guy feeling alive. All right, so I'm feeling pretty okay about that. He's looking down at his phone. It feels like a look down, as opposed to like that weird cocked over to one side cutout look down. Then the next part would be getting this back arm into position. So I'm gonna foreshorten down this limb. We can do that pretty aggressively. And then we have a choice. Either we can create an overlay of this hand to go in front of that phone. We could use some sort of a cutter method, or we could actually just add these fingers onto the phone, which I think would be, if I'm playing with my phone, which of course I don't have near me, I'll use this free toothpaste I got from the dentist. So if you're holding your phone like this, your hands, the front part of your hands, tend not to move so much. It's just your thumbs moving a lot. So I think it's safe to put those fingers right on the phone itself, or to put all the fingers on one hand. I think that's the way I'll do it. So I'm going to do that right quick, and then I'll be back. Okay, so I've thrown some little awkward hands in there, but it kind of looks like he's holding a phone now. And we can just throw in some thumb action. Both of these hands are on the front hand. So if I move the phone and the hand, it's going to move these back fingers as well, and I don't have to try and line that stuff up. I can also get a little bit of an overlap here, so it looks like his fingers are sort of interlaced without having to try and figure out some complex solution to that. So I think that's good enough. We'll go with that. That's pose 1. We're going to slide that back onto frame 1 because we don't need the head anymore for this reference, and we've saved our other perspective head over here. Now, one thing Harmony does is it likes to extend your exposure on your drawings along like this. So if you've forgotten what your 3/4 dude is, you can go over here and check. It's drawing 1 on your 3/4, I believe, and you can fix that. If you're a thoughtful person, you can also think to fix that when you initially make a new drawing. So you decide to create a new drawing here, you would duplicate that drawing and then go over to where you need drawing 1, and you can fix it right away. That way you don't have to try and remember it later. But it is one of the things you have to keep an eye on in Harmony. Those tricky dudes. So now I like all of the things that just happened here, and I'm going to put a keyframe on my peg. So not this peg, but this one in here that I'm using to organize all my keys. I'm going to hit F6 there to give it a keyframe on every single piece all the way down, and then drag it back. I like to do this because if I'm adding a keyframe here, I may not actually keyframe everything. So like the ears won't be keyframed and the shoulders might not be keyframed, but over here they will have the animation, and it may try and tween oddly if I'm using auto tween for whatever reason. So it's just safe once you're super happy with your key to put a peg or to put a frame all the way down using your F6 key. So now here he's looking up a tiny bit. So he's just working on his thing. He happens to look over, and it's not a huge movement. We may want to use our regular face here, or we may want to use some distance halfway between our down face and our up face. So what I'm going to do is grab just the head, and I'm going to press Control and drag it over here, and then I can use my auto tween. And some of it's not working great, like this arm, because I had to draw a new one. But here I've got the option now, because we've got a sensible hierarchy. We can use any of these drawings in between. And of course you can get more drawings. So I think I'm going to favor our normal drawing. So I'm going to grab the one right before here. I'm going to delete this because I don't need it. And now instead of the upright, I'm going to use almost upright. And it just adjusts that as we go along. So now instead of trying to get somewhat of a downward pose again, I'm using Toon Boom's auto tween system to save something about halfway in between. So it saves me a little bit of work rather than redoing the whole head just looking a little bit up. There's no need to do anything twice if you don't have to. And so we'll have him look over to the left, maybe a little bit of curiosity. Just looking. And because it's stop motion, we're able to go back and forth between our first frame and our other frame. So he kind of looks up, relaxes his arm a little bit. And I'm always going to the highest point. So I want his shoulders to relax a little bit. He's got quite strong shoulders. So instead of relaxing them here, because this is his neutral pose, what I'm going to do is go back here, and I'm going to bring his shoulders up. I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to do both arms at the same time. And then I'm going to adjust the shoulders so that they line up. Okay, so now there's a little bit of a subtle movement. I can even take it a little further by pulling this one down as well. I'm just going to skew these a little bit, counter animate my hand. So he's looking over. Now here's one thing that I don't like. This wrist is staying very close to the same position even though the rest of the character is moving around it. And it feels like there's a nail or something in there. So I don't like that very much. I feel like it's kind of a strange thing to happen. So what I'm going to do is just bring this arm down a little bit more, just so I feel like the movement is worth it. If you don't have a big enough change in movement, it kind of feels like, why bother? So you want to change it enough to make it worth it, even if it's just a little bit slouchier or just bring this hand down a little bit more. All right, so now we're getting a little bit more life out of it. And the torso's not moving at all, so I want to move that, just so it doesn't look so clinical. That's one thing that can happen when you're doing cutout animation, is everything can stay so perfectly still. You're never getting any boil or accidental movement. You really have to go in and make sure that you're changing things enough to make it look like the movement is worth it. All right, and the last thing is his glasses have slid down his nose a little bit in the previous frame. So we don't want his glasses to just magically slide back up his face. And I've decided to throw some deformers on my eyebrows. So I want a little bit more expression than I'm getting currently. And remember, if you add a deformer like this once you've already started animating, then you have to make sure to give that deformer a keyframe if you're going to be animating it, or it won't know that it's been deformed, because this part here might not have moved, so it won't automatically put a keyframe there on the offset. So you have to make sure to add one. So you can just do that by collapsing your eyebrow peg like this, and then hitting F6, and then doing the same for the other one. So make sure you choose something higher than the eyebrow former, and then just hit F6 so that it's definitely got keyframes on the things you haven't moved yet. Move along. Do your next one. Now this one is just an identical drawing of this one, but that doesn't mean that you need to have an identical key. So what you could do is copy it, the master peg, here. Make sure it's an odd number. And you can grab a few of these features. So I'm actually going to take the head. I'm going to take the head off. Seems a little weird. And then I'm going to drag this part over and then reconnect the head, because I want the arm keys from one part and I want the head part from the other, but there's not a sensible place for me to steal that because of this strange, because of the way that you have to set up the chest bag. So by just disconnecting this really quickly, I can grab everything below it. I can grab everything from here below without actually affecting this one. And then I'm going to bring this up and change it. So this way I'm getting something that's a little bit unique from either of them, but I'm not adding a ton of work for myself because we have 50 seconds to do and we ain't got time for that. Okay. and then grab this guy just to move him a little bit. So here he's typing away, and of course we'd add in later on, we'd give him the typey bits of the fingers, and we can move his shoulders a little bit, give him a little bit of life, move his eyes, blink, stuff like that. But for now, we're just going to do this, doot, doot, doot. And let's bring him down a little bit more, like he's into it again. Nah, okay, I'm back into it. But then he's like, wait a minute. And see, this is why I've copied this straight body. So now I'm getting the full torso, the full length of the arms. This hand, of course, is a train wreck. But the hand that we had earlier is still in here, in our little hand rotation. And because I've decided to pull him down a little bit more here to get him more interesting, and you could even force that a little bit more. Get him, really push him into getting interested back into this thing. Pull his shoulders up a little bit. So he's kind of looking, then he looks away, and then he gets back into it, but with a little bit more gusto. And the reason I'm doing this is because from here to here is now going to be a bigger difference. Here, boop, that's a pretty big difference. But here to here is a bigger difference. So we're going to feel it more. It's going to give us a little bit more punch. Bloop. So he suddenly realizes, what? Uh-oh. And again, I can steal these arms. So I'm going to grab this arm, control pull it over. Looks like a hot mess, but we're going to control pull this one over, and it's cleaned it up a little bit. Or we could grab these arms down here, because these ones are a little bit lower. Control drag. Have this control drag. So now I'm getting these foreshortened arms I've already done for free. I'm not going to do it twice. Don't do anything twice. We may need to keep manipulating it until it looks right, but it's a lot closer because it's including that foreshortening than if we'd taken the actual straightened arm and then gone back in and done foreshortening again. Like, just don't do anything twice, guys. That's moral of today's story. And some people, I've got these stretched along the timeline. Some people like to stack their keys one right next to each other. That's another perfectly reasonable way to work. If you like to do it that way, it's not a big deal. So he's going back to his thing. Whoop. And actually, I think I'm even going to bring this more. Let's bring those shoulders down, the head up. So we've got to counter underneath the head a little bit. And we can have him looking over with a little bit more enthusiasm. So if we tilt these eyes, kind of give him a little bit of perspective. And then we grab these eyebrows. Boop, boop. I want to see our deformers. And we're going to get as much out of that shocked face as we can. So if your eyebrows start a little bit wonky because you're deforming them too much, don't be afraid to redraw new eyebrows. I think his eyes are wide enough that we don't need to like freakishly enhance them. We can bring this mouth down a bit. I think I might actually turn his head a little bit more. So if you're working with this type of rig, we do have a pose already with the head and the features moved over. So that's something you might want to do ahead of time, because now I'm going to, I'll lose my mouth. The eyebrows are already moving along, so it's not a big loss. Do that. Mm-hmm. Whoa, weird deformation. I feel like it's worth it to get this more sidey head. That might be a little bit too far. That's a judgment call. He's just doing beep, 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 weep. So I'm going to move both these arms down together. So I'm going to my network, I'm going to peg, peg, and then bring them down together, and then adjust my shoulder. Boop, boop. And hit my visual thing, and give him some more roundy shoulders. Make sure those are working. How do I feel about that? Maybe I'll actually bring his body around a little bit too. I'll have to adjust those hands after, but I think it'll add to our pose. So he's just relaxing. Oh geez. Here's a little bit of a better silhouette here. You don't want your whole body to just turn into a big amorphous lump. You want to be able to have a clear idea of what's going on. So let's clarify this a little bit more. Then he's going to be like, whoa, whoop, whoop. And now he's going to kind of crinkle in on himself and back up. He's going to take a step back. So here, I didn't think this through, but I'm gonna probably throw just a brick wall here. Like maybe you can't see that. So I think I might just throw like a brick wall texture back here. He's down in the subway. I'm thinking he might need to do a little bit more of a side, but instead of doing a full turn, his back's gonna be the wall here. So I'm just thinking out loud, do more of this thing where he turns his back to the wall and then kind of slinks along the wall like this. I think that might be a bit of a better pose. Not a better drawing under any circumstances. So depending on the show, some places they really want you to adhere to the storyboard 100%. They've scrutinized it. They have borders that they really trust, and they've gone to the trouble of figuring out exactly what they want. Whereas in other places, you have a little bit more of an artistic license to explore the poses a little more and push it more or do whatever. So that's something you just have to get used to in the studio that you're working in. But of course, if you're doing your own stuff, if you're starting to move along with your poses and you feel like you could have done better, then by all means do better. So let's give him a scared pose. Let's see if we can scare him a little bit. Start at the highest one, which is our torso deformer. I have been kind of mucking around the torso deformer after, but this is such a big move. There's no way you could do this after. But I really want him to crinkle his body. And I want him to move back. So I'm going to start to translate this guy walking across. So I'm actually going to add a translate peg to the top of my hierarchy. Of course, you want to make sure you have a keyframe on your first frame so that you're actually moving him. That's a good thing to do. Now, I don't do a lot of rotations on the shoulders. You'll often see me translate using the upper arm or rotate and then adjust the shoulders. It really depends on the type of movement. Because I'm really familiar with these shoulders since I've designed them, I'll kind of work back and forth. So it's one of those things that you want to play around with to figure out what is going to work for you in particular, but there's not really a right way to do it. I do skew a little bit on the shoulders. That's something that you want to be really careful with. It's very easy if you're skewing a lot of stuff to make it look like it's just broken. You can get off model really easily deforming stuff that way. This guy is completely hidden. If you were to move this hand, it's load bearing, like everything behind it is destroyed, but because you can't see it, it's fair game to cheat that, as long as you're not expecting it to auto-tween to something else. So yeah, as long as you're not banking on that to auto-tween to something, that's an okay move to make. Okay, I feel like the body's okay. We have to hide this corner. Make sure your body's not jacked up. And remember, you've got this little thing here so you can check that out. And we're going to give him a better expression. And if you want to, you can actually throw deformers on these eyelids. I do have a few little drawing substitutions in there, but you don't need to feel restricted by the stuff that you have. You can definitely go farther than that if you want to. So because I've distorted the mouth up quite a bit, I'm going to come over here and actually grab the proper mouth rotation and see which mouth is closest to my needs. I just muted this so I could get a drink of water, so I'm not sure how much talking I've been doing while not even recording, because I'm a superstar. Played around with the mouth. I think it's mostly just the expression. The only things of note I think I talked about is when you're doing mouth shapes, you want to remember that the teeth don't move. The top teeth are connected to your skull. So even though my bottom even though my bottom teeth can move around quite a bit, my jaw and my lips can move all over the place, these top teeth are fixed to your skull. So when you're doing lip sync or expressions, you want to keep those teeth static. So these top teeth aren't moving. Even when we're going through some of these U mouths, the teeth should stay totally where they are fixed to the skull. And it's going to make your lip syncs look a lot better. Any of your expressions are going to look a lot more correct with the face if you keep an eye on that, keep those teeth still. So here he's kind of freaking out. And now we're going to do our turn. So I think this turn, like I said, I want this body. Were you here for that? I don't even know. I'm going to get the lower part of my body leaving first, so his legs are moving a little bit faster than his head. So I'm going to put my next key here. I took out the front pose. think I'm going to throw that in later because I want to keep his head pretty far over there until the last minute. All right, so I'm going to use my translate peg and go over a bit. Then I'm going to go to the highest part of my hierarchy, and I've slammed a key down here. Boop. I like him. He's getting a key. Then I'm moving on and grab the chest. What I'm going to do, I think I'm going to just straighten the chest out to begin with, because I don't want it to distort it too much, because then I might get some weird fracturing in the body. And then I'm going to reanimate the torso here. So I want the lower part of the body to be going first. His legs are going for a walk. I'm going to keep his head fairly still. I can use my... And we're going to have to get this torso moving around. One thing we could actually do is grab the front body, because the shoulders are in a different place on this one. I think that's a good idea. I'm going to come over here to the torso. And I want that head, but I want the front body. I think that'll give me a lot. And grab this lower arm, take that along for the ride. So I went to all the trouble setting that up. And then we just have to adjust. So I like to go along and steal whatever I can along the way because I'm lazy. And we really don't have time to be doing things 2 and 3 times each. So going back and stealing for shortened arms and stuff when they work is a great way to save yourself a little bit of time. It's not always going to work. Like here, we need to do something a little bit more with this hand. But I'm going to leave that for now. I don't think that's a hugely important part to getting this initial part animated, and I can probably use something very similar to this hand, or even copy this guy and paste him over. But in this stage, I don't feel like it's crucial to get that done. Moving back a bit. He's turning. I feel like this guy's got to be quite a bit further down the road. All right, so his body's leaving first. We can tween the translate here. Let's see how that goes. Bring him so that his body's coming around. Alright, so the head I want more towards the 3/4. But I don't want to lose that expression. I like it. So let's try. The only thing that's animated into place is the eyebrows. I don't feel like it's so much work that I have to disconnect the eyebrows. What I'm going to do is go from here. So this is going to grab your drawing and your peg. I'm going to click on this one, which is just peg. This one is just drawing. I'm going to grab the 3/4 front and pull that over. And I'll make sure that I'm on my head. And grab the 3/4 front, pull that over. So it's retained most of it. These guys can come up, and then the eyebrows I can drag over from here. He's really starting to look back now, so don't be afraid to put some perspective on those pupils. Just by giving it a little bit squish, you're gaining a lot for very little, and that's when you're working on a TV show and it's fast-paced, you want to gain as much as you can for as little work expended. Of course, if you're looking for doing the best demo reel or a real showpiece, then you're going to want to give it a little bit more effort. You don't need to hack job it. You can do individual drawings for things. Don't feel like that's a bad thing. It's just when you're working for television, that's not your goal. Your goal as an employee is to complete your work on time to the best of your ability. And the downside to the 3D rig is you don't just flip everything. This is actually like a different view, even though it's symmetrical. So you're going to have to redo your face on this side. Alright, so that's our posing done. Double check to make sure things aren't too bad. There's some stuff here which I'm not going to force you to watch where I have to fix hands and do some turnarounds of this phone. But I think for the most part we're starting to see what this is going to look like. And you can see what it's starting to look like. It's not a huge scene. I've been at this for 1 hour and 20 minutes. So it's probably going to take the better part of the second hour to finish off the hands down here and get those working. Really happy with the fingers, but I don't think it's the worst thing. There's certainly tons of ways this could have gone. Like here, this jump, this could have gone way farther. He could have thrown the phone up and then juggled it and be like, oh, and done a lot of mucking around. I just want something that could be doable within a reasonable time frame. I don't think that anybody's going to watch me animate something for 7 hours. The next video, I'm going to continue doing this and talk about where we go from here, getting some breakdowns, looking at some more of the details, things like hand movement, eye movement, and I'm just gonna take this to the final stage to a polish. So thanks for dropping by. Congratulations if you stuck it out this far. Like, share, subscribe, all those things that you know people ask you to do, and I will see you in the next video.